Hello everyone, it's Lindsay, and today I have a Tip Tuesday for you guys. And I hadn't planned on doing this particular thing for Tip Tuesday, but I had a lot of questions recently on a video, so I thought I'd throw it in there. On Saturday, I reviewed the Arteza tube watercolors, and in that review, I showed this color mixing chart. And so I had a lot of questions because I didn't show how I made it. I just kind of did it off camera. I had some questions about how I put it together, and so I thought I'd hop on here and show you guys because this is such a useful tool if you're wanting to dive into the world of watercolors, and really kind of goes to show you how far your watercolor sets can stretch. So this particular swatch is 24 colors. So this took hours and hours to do. There's no way I could do that on camera. It was super labor intensive, but you can just see all the range of colors that you can get with those 24 colors. But for today's video, I thought I would go ahead and use the Illustrative Faith watercolor set from Pebeo. And this one only has 12 colors, and honestly these two are very, very close. They basically are the same color, but it only has 12 colors, so this would be a little bit easier to show you guys on a grid. Now I went ahead and drew out my grid off camera because it was a little bit math heavy to try to figure out how to get it on here. This is something that I am gonna probably laminate and keep, and so this, you use a lot of effort putting this together, and so it's something that you're probably gonna want to keep and refer back to. So getting it right and getting it even is probably a good idea. I'm not going to put my measurements down just because they're not perfect, and so you're just going to have to kind of figure out. What I did was I took the square space that my grids were going to be in and measured that out. So mine was about 8 inches, divided that by how many colors I was going to use, which is 12. And that gave me an idea of how big each square would be. So I ended up doing 5/8 inch squares, which left me plenty of room on the edges to write out the titles of the colors, write out the title of the palette. So it's not perfect, but you know, just you can figure it out. I know you can. I have faith in you. And there may even be somewhere online that has some fancy conversion thing. I'll see what I can find online for you guys. But so I got my grid. It is 12 across the top and 12 across the bottom. So I'm ignoring this chunk here. We can even scribble that out. Okay, so I'm 12 across here, 12 across here. And so typically what I would do is write out the names of the colors. However, these came with names on them, but I didn't keep the names on the color just because it isn't a very big set and there wasn't really a good space to keep them on there. I guess I could have written them on the side. So some of you might have those color names. What I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna put the color swatch full strength at the top, and I think that'll be good enough for me. Now, when I'm doing this, I do have 2 different cups of water. I'm going to kind of keep these in frame here. Let's go this way. So I have my dirty cup and my clean cup. And I think I always try to do that when I am watercoloring anyways, just so that you get real crisp, clean colors. But for this project in particular, it's very important. So I am wanting to have clean water on my brush at all times. So I am going to activate these watercolors just by spraying some water. If I've got any mix of color, like that blue went over into that pink, I'm going to wipe that off. So when my brush is dirty, I'm going to rinse it in the dirty water to get all the excess paint off, and then I'm going to rinse it in the clean water. That way I'm only going in with clean water. If I start swatching colors with the dirty water, it's going to tint the color and you're not going to get a true payoff from it. So I'm going to go in and just pick up some pigment and just swatch out across the top here with the full strength of color. Nothing fancy. Again, I'm going to rinse in my dirty water, rinse in my clean water, and then I kind of get any excess water out of the brush. I'm going to go into that orange color. I'm going to be careful not to touch the colors so they don't bleed into each other. And actually I could go ahead and do this side too. So this side is going to be exactly the same. And these swatches don't have to be perfect. You can even do this if you have the names of your colors, swatch them out like this, and then write the names in these swatch areas. And that way, instead of having, like I had a swatch card and this color mixing chart, you would only need 1 chart if you did it this way. Pick up this pink color. And I'm trying to be fairly consistent about how much water I use, but for this part, I'm not too worried about it. This just kind of gives me an idea of what the color is. So when I go back to use this chart, I can look and see, you know, if I mix this color and this color, what does it create? So I'm always rinsing in that dirty water and then rinsing in that clean water. So I'm gonna go ahead and put you on fast forward while I finish swatching these out. Okay, so now is where the color mixing comes in, and you can definitely mix in the palette here. I just have a piece of cardstock in like a, I don't know, plastic sleeve. This is my stamp packaging that I make, and I work on this just because I have more area to work on. So for this, it's a lot like multiplication tables. You're gonna come where the two colors meet. So the diagonal is going to be the full strength of the colors, because if you come with these two colors that are the same and they meet here, it's going to be that full strength. If you come with this deep blue, where it meets, it's going to be that full strength. So that whole diagonal is going to be full strength color. So I can come in and I'm going to take that kind of ochre color. It's not going to get mixed with anything. It's just its own color. And that's going to go right in here. So that's a little bit boring. But what I like to do, since I'm going to work with this ochre color first, is I'm going to come over and get a little bit of that color on my palette in several little puddles. And I try to keep adding water to my brush so that I don't end up with a puddle that is more pigment, less water. Several of these kind of going at the same time. Okay. And then for this one, we're working this way. So we've got the yellow ochre, and then it's going to meet up with that orangey color. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of this orangey color, and I'm going to mix it with that yellow ochre. So that is my mix of the two colors together. You can see that orange is pretty strong. Rinse off my dirty water, rinse off my clean water. Next one is going to be this light pink with that yellow ochre color. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of that pink, mix it. And sometimes I can tell if I didn't quite get enough of that secondary color. And then this gives you kind of a fleshy, salmon-y color. So it's kind of fun to see. I'm always kind of surprised by how some of the colors mix. Now we're going to go with that little bit darker pink. Like I said, I'm trying to pick up the same amount of pigment, but I mean, it's not an exact science. And then you just keep on going on. So now we're going to pick up this blue shade, mix it with that yellow ochre color, and you get this really pretty blue-green. And this is where you start getting in some of those earthier tones and then some bright colors. And you can really see how far this palette will stretch. So now we're going to go to that dark blue shade. And I can just tell when I'm mixing it that it's not 50-50, and so I'll know whether to add in more color. That just comes over time and having played with the watercolors. That gives you that really pretty earthy green. So honestly, this is going to be a good project for me because I don't love the Illustrated Faith watercolor palette. They're just not my cup of tea color-wise, and they're pretty transparent, pretty, like, they're not super bright, but this is going to show me some really awesome colors. I mean, this right here are just some awesome colors that you can mix with these colors that I never would have thought of. So we'll go in with that teal color. Mix it with that ochre. Right. So if you were using like liquid watercolors or something, it'd be easier to have it be an exact science, but it's kind of hard with these. And like I said, I am not a professional artist. I just do this because I like it and it's fun. And so it's not perfect, but it kind of gives you an idea. So I still have a few more colors, so I'm going to go get that green out of there. And go back in and create some little puddles. And we can go mix this bright green. And you can see some of these colors don't change much, but then others really change depending on the combination of colors. I think this one's going to be a big change, this kind of foresty green color. And this is just a good exercise for understanding how the color wheel works and how color mixing works and how colors relate to each other, and all that kind of thing kind of gets hashed out with something like this. Now, I know a lot of people don't paint with white watercolors. I like white just because it can increase the opacity of the paint. It kind of, you know, mutes it down to a pastel color. So I do use white occasionally. It just gives you a different tone. By adding black, it usually creates more of a earthy tone to a color. So adding a little bit of black to that yellow. And black's an easy one to overdo, so you do want to be careful. Okay, so there's our first row. I'll do a couple more in the second row, and then I'll put you on fast forward, and you can kind of just watch how I do it. So now we're going to work with the orange shade. So I'm going to put out little puddles of my orange. Okay, and then we mix it with yellow. So this is going to be the same color as this. And so you can choose to either maybe do more orange on this side, more yellow on that side, or do them the same. It's up to you. I'm going to just see what we get here. So this is going to be that orange and that ochre yellow color. So you can see it's a little bit different than this color just because it means that I added different amounts of the yellow and the orange. Now this is going to be straight orange because it's orange on orange right here. We're going to do orange and pink. This looks like a really pretty coral shade. Orange and that darker pink. And this is where you'll see just how close those two colors are. They are not that different. I mean, here you're probably seeing like a flesh versus like a salmon color difference, but not much. Okay, gonna bring in that bright blue. Should get like a brownish gray, and I know that, so I can see that I have too much blue in the swatch because I know blue and orange are opposite from each other on the color wheel, and so they should create a brown color. There you can see that is what you should be getting when you mix blue and orange. And that's just what I know from having studied color theory and played with watercolors, and that just takes time. You can get a color wheel, but this is a great way. Like, there's no brown in this palette, so how do you make brown? Well, blue and orange makes a really deep bark brown. We've got this deep blue, Okay, so I went ahead and sped this up quite a bit and decided to go ahead and do a voiceover because the video, it probably took me about an hour to put together this color chart. So there's no way you're going to want to sit here and watch me paint squares for an hour. But I'm just continuing on the same method. I'm bringing down the colors from that top row and mixing them with that color to the left. Still working on the orange here. Now, this whole process, it would be great to do with any watercolors that you have. That way you get an idea of what the range is of each one of your palettes. This would also be great to do with things like distress inks if you wanted to swatch those out, because I love to use distress inks like watercolors, not necessarily in my Bible journaling because they do bleed through, but when I'm doing cards and things like that, I do really like to use distress inks. So you could do the same kind of method with those, and it may actually be easier to get equal concentrations, because what I'm showing you here is I'm having a hard time getting like equal parts of each color, so my swatch is a little bit different between the two squares that should be the same. I'm also really having some issues with getting too much water or not enough water. I don't know if it's just this particular brush. This is a synthetic, like faux squirrel or something like that. It's not real squirrel, but it's supposed to mimic squirrel hair. And it really holds a lot of water in it. And so I'm kind of having an issue with water. And I noticed the colors in this palette differ between each color as far as how like thick the pigment is. I know that doesn't make sense unless you're actually like playing with these watercolors, but some are just more intense and thick than others, and so the color payoff is a little bit stronger, and so it's not perfect, but at least gives me an idea of where to start when I'm wanting to get something close to a certain color with this particular palette. So I'm just continuing to mix those colors and kind of go through each and every one of these. And you can see with a palette of 24 or 36 or even more than that, it's going to take you a very long time. And you also need a larger piece of paper or you're going to have teeny, teeny, tiny little squares. So 12 is probably the most manageable, 6, 12 and under is kind of the most manageable way to do this color mixing chart. But I really would encourage you to try this out, even just for the sake of understanding how colors mix together, and that will really help in a lot of your different ways of doing art, not just in your Bible, but I have a video all about color. It was another Tip Tuesday. I'll link that down below because it talks about a color chart and how to read a color chart and complementary colors and all that goodness is in that video. So I will link that down below. That color there where I mixed the blue and the orange, you can see I really struggled to get equal parts of that blue and the orange, and then it ended up with too much water, and so it was just kind of a hot mess. But that's okay. Like I said, we're not going for perfection at all. I will have this palette linked below. I'll have the watercolor linked down below for you guys so you can, or the watercolor paper linked down below so you can grab that. Here you can see this deep blue is just very pigmented, and this is one of those ones where it's a little bit thicker. So, and you can see the difference there where if I'm adding the blue to the yellow versus adding the yellow to the blue, if that makes sense, the colors are slightly different. And so you may want to do that on purpose. I had not meant to do that on purpose, but that's okay. It kind of shows you the different shades you can get depending on what color you have stronger in that mix there. So like I said, I'll have everything linked down below so you can grab that. I'll try to grab some videos that kind of correspond with this one, like the Arteza review, the Tip Tuesday all about color. Those will be down in the description box. And I'm going to go ahead and just put some music on it and let you finish watching me swatch these out. so the last few, my camera was starting to overheat, so I had to turn it off and just finish it, but it was basically the same method as I did all up here. Now for this row down here with the black, I did use a lot more pigment and less water, just to show you that you can get some deeper colors by adding the black. But that is the completed chart. You can see there was a couple areas where if you have too much water, it really dilutes down the color. And so that yellow or that orange and blue is also right here. And so you can kind of see the difference between when I got too much water in it and when I did not. So, but this gives you an opportunity to see two different versions of that same color combination through the chart. And so you can see just the variety of colors that you can get with even just a 12 set of watercolors. This also kind of shows you how muted the Illustrated Faith watercolors are. So if I flip this over, this is those Arteza watercolors, and I didn't use any higher concentration really of color. This is just how much more pigmented the color is than the Illustrated Faith colors. So that just kind of also gives you an idea of the different brands. Not that that's a bad thing, especially if you're using these for Bible journaling, which is what they are intended for, then you don't have to worry so much about covering the text because the colors are pretty muted, pretty transparent, and not super, super deep like some of these other colors. Of course, just by adding more water to these colors, you can kind of make them more transparent, and so these would work also. But these are just right out of the gate. You don't really have to worry about accidentally covering up Bible text with these because they are pretty muted colors, but you can just kind of see you can get lots of earthy tones and browns and really pretty deep purples even with these bright colors that you have. So there's a look at that. If you have any questions, be sure to leave those down below, or any comments, leave those down below. Check out the description box for links to the products that I used in the video today and any related videos I might have, and give this video a thumbs up if it was helpful. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed, and until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.